What's up, everybody? It is Jordan here from Wednesday Night Warhammer. We're talking about the brain bugs, the best bugs from Synaptic Nexus. We got our Zoanthropes, our Maliceptors, Norn Emissaries. They've all gotten just a little bit better with the balanced data slate that we got in June. And yes, I'm just now getting around to Synaptic Nexus. So let's jump in. Let's see what they got. If you're unfamiliar with the Detachment, it is basically Tyranids versions of the Gladius Task Force from Space Marines, except it's cooler because you get to run Tyranids instead. Yes. But basically, the Detachment rule is synaptic imperatives. They're similar to what we had in 9th edition with different units giving different things, except the Detachment just has three basic ones that are just default. You can choose at the start of each battle round. You don't have to. And then each model in your army that is within synapse range gains the benefit. We have a 5-up invuln, we have a +1 to advance and charge, and a +1 to hit in melee. These imperatives are okay, and they do give a little bit of either defensive buff or extra reach with the advance and charge. The +1 to hit, I feel like, doesn't really affect Tyranids too much because either the things that are going to want to be hitting are pretty much already hitting on twos, or I don't know, maybe getting in combat is not necessarily a thing that a lot of Tyranid bugs really want to be doing right now in the meta. But the main strength of this detachment, I feel, is definitely with the enhancement strategies and some synergies that we're going to talk about right now. Our enhancements, our first two we got. The first one, we have Psychostatic Disruption. Enemy units cannot be set up within 12 of the bearer instead of 9. And then, so it's basically like you get an infiltrator on a stick. You can say, here's my Neurotyrant, you can't deep strike within 12. Or here's my Parasite Amortrax, you can't deep strike within 12. That's pretty good, just face value. But then also it has additionally, which is very exciting because we get more with this enhancement. Once per game, when an enemy unit is about to arrive from strategic reserves on a 4-up, that unit cannot arrive this turn. Excellent. That is phenomenal. I believe there is there's a clause in there that doesn't say it can't, it doesn't die because of this. But that's very strong. If your opponent wants to bring something on turn 2 and you say, nope, you're not allowed to do that. And it's basically a coin flip to, keep your opponent's Terminators in deep strike for an additional turn. That's amazing. That's phenomenal. The biggest downside to this is it is 30 points, which in my opinion is a lot of points for an enhancement. And oftentimes when I am doing some armchair list building or tactics or whatever, 30 points is a little bit tough of a sell for me to have on a model, especially on a model that I'm essentially saying, okay, he's going to screen out my backfield, which is not the best. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good enhancement. I think the points are a little bit too high. However, Power of the Hive Mind, improve the strength and AP of psychic weapons of the bearer by 1. And you might be asking, Jordan, what weapons and what characters have a psychic weapon? Now, I would say, thank you for asking. What a great question. And then I would also say it's just the Neurotyrant. So this basically says your Neurotyrant's Flamer gets to be Strength 6 and AP 2, ignores cover, 2 damage for 10 points. If you have 10 points and you have a Neurotyrant, slam this enhancement on it. Oh my gosh, especially if you're leading Zoanthropes with it, which I'm sure you are in Synaptic Nexus. So this would be a phenomenal enhancement. And sometimes I like enhancements that literally say you're going to kill things better. And that's exactly what Power of the Hive Mind does. Finishing up our enhancements, we got two pretty good ones. The first one is Synaptic Control. Simply reduce the damage of attacks allocated to the bearer by 1. And it's just 20 points. It's just a good enhancement. I think a Hive Tyrant carries this enhancement very well. Taking away damage 2 to damage 1 for a Hive Tyrant is pretty good. It's not really a 5-up Feel No Pain that I sometimes miss from Invasion Fleet when I'm running Synaptic Nexus, but it definitely does give your Hive Tyrant some very well worth it tankiness for just 20 points. If you got it, do it, And then last but certainly not least, I think this is probably one of those cool enhancements that people can play around. The Dirge Heart of Karis. enemy units within 9 of the bearer are at -1 leadership. And it is, of course, a Synapse character only. So I put a Parasite of Mortrex right there because some people have had some fun just attaching that to the Parasite, sending him out, and then just getting a really good shadows. If you're able to finagle it so that he's within 6 of something, then you're going to essentially have somebody be at a -3 leadership. Be careful you can't get worse than a 9, of course, but just stacking all of these debuffs is really good, and it goes well with one of the stratagems we'll talk about later. It's 15 points, so if you do want to try out the Parasite and do that, I think you should. In fact, let me know in the comments if you've tried that combo and if you've had fun with the Parasite, because my Parasite has been collecting dust on the shelf for a little bit too long. So I'm hoping he gets to be let out and see the sun, or at least the fluorescent lights in my local game store. Who knows? Here is where the detachment really starts to show its strength and really, kind of exemplifies why it is worth taking this detachment and why I think this detachment actually deserves more love than it receives. First up, we have the main reason why I said all of those wonderful things about this detachment is we have irresistible will. So you target one of your Synapse units from your army that has not fought or shot, and one enemy unit within 24 inches of that unit. Then reroll ones to hit and wounds against that unit, but that is with every single unit within 6 inches of that Synapse unit. So what you do obviously is you have Zoanthropes. They come out, whatever, they advance and they're ready to shoot because of your Hive Tyrant, and they can spread out a little bit because they are essentially a 7-man unit. So that 6 inches within that unit becomes much larger because you're spread out, your Zoanthropes. And then you can basically set up where your entire army gets to reroll ones to hit and wound against something that your opponent has, I guess, foolishly put into line of sight. We will be talking about this a little bit later, but reroll ones to hit and wound go very well with a certain unit that has incredible upgrades. And it is not a Synapse unit, but we'll talk about that in a second. Next up is a very, very exciting stratagem, I think, at least for Tyranids. It's grenades with extra steps, but kind of better. It's Smothering Shadow. Right after enemy unit fails a battle shock test, one Synapse unit within 12 inches of that enemy unit, then you get to do grenades. So you roll 66, and each 3-up is immortal. So it's grenades, but a little bit better. Because each 3-up is immortal instead of a 4-up, but you do have to jump through the hoop of making sure that targets or making sure your opponent battle shocks. So that's kind of the combo that I was talking about with like the Parasite of Mortrex. He can trigger battle shocks, I believe, with his little barb thing. I might be mistaken, but if he doesn't, if he has that enhancement, you pop shadows, you can get people to like a -3 on their battle shock, and then you pop this too, and then you can just like maybe finish off a weak unit or definitely contest something in a strong way. It could be good. And notice it is not locked to any phase or anything. So it's whenever you make your opponent's units really scared of your bugs, then they get hit with a bunch of brain grenades, which is phenomenal. The next stratagem is one hopefully that you don't have to use ever. If you are able to plan around and move your army efficiently, you should not be able to use or you should not have to use Synaptic Channeling. But Synaptic Channeling is command phase, one Synapse unit from your army. It increases its range of Synapse from 6 inches to 9 inches. I don't know. I'm not really sure it's worth CP. Just move better, honestly, All right. Next. Okay. So the last 3 stratagems we have, the first one is Reinforced Hive Node. It's basically Armor of Contempt, but you just have to use it on Synapse units. So any Synapse unit, you can just -1 AP from the incoming attack, and it's great. It's really good on Norn emissaries. So they have a 2-up save base, of course, and then you put them in cover, which is easy to do. And then you spend 1 CP for them to have Armor of Contempt as well. So basically they have a 0-up save, I guess. And so people need a AP2 or AP3 rather to change anything, really. And then you're golden. You know what I'm saying? there's not much else to say about this one. It's not super good with many of our other units. I mean, maybe you can use it with Hive Tyrant, it'll be okay, but like Maliceptors or Zoanthropes, you just have a hard time because they're 4-up invulns all the time, and Maliceptor is going to be a 3-up. What would be interesting is if we were able to use this on other units besides Synapse units, as long as they were within Synapse range. I think this would be disgusting on a Tyrannifex, but maybe that is exactly why we are not allowed to do that. So that's Reinforced Hive Node, or Node rather. Next up is, I honestly think, one of the best stratagems that Tyranids have, and it's because they only have it in one detachment, but it's just Override Instincts, Fall Back, Shoot, and Charge, which is very, very helpful for that little guy that I put there, the Maliceptor. Maliceptors get stuck in combat a whole bunch, and then they're not really able to use their gun very well because they can't shoot into what they're fighting. Their melee is okay, but it's really not the best. So being able to have them scoot back, have everything shoot at what they were in combat, and then they can shoot at what they were in combat, and then having them charge again to bully a unit or just do some chip damage, I think is a really, really good move. In addition, I know Zoanthropes, they gain the benefit from Big Guns Never Tire now, with the Neurotyrant attaching to them, which is still goofy, but having them have the ability to fall back shoot is also very strong too. So they're not really able to be tar-pitted or locked somewhere. So Override Instincts, excellent stratagem for Tyranids just in general. Last but not least is Imperative Dominance. You just put target unit in an imperative, even if it has already been used, and then it replaces the current imperative. And you can do this even if you don't have an imperative 5. It just slides right into there. So I think something that is good is +1 advance and charge. You want your Zoanthropes to get extra on their advance when they're next to the Hive Tyrant so that they can get a little bit of better range. The 5-up invuln is useful for your Tyrannifexes, or maybe if you're having fun and bringing warriors, that would be good as well. +1 to hit as well, maybe with the warriors, that could help. But it just allows for a little bit of a toolbox for any unit that might benefit a little bit extra to an imperative that you have used, or even if you don't want to use it yet. So far, you're probably saying, Jordan, why are you going over Detachment? That has been out for pretty much a year now, and I would agree with you. However, here's the thing. Synaptic Nexus has changed a lot because of the Tyranid buffs that happened in June. So what's changed? Lots of cool stuff. +1 strength and synapse. This is literally an army that has synapse in the name, kind of. So you're going to have a lot of synapse, and you're going to be able to spread that +1 strength around to where it matters. Maliceptors, you're probably taking Maliceptors. They're going to be hitting on strength 10 with their punch, or strength 8 with their sweep, which is definitely an interesting breaking point. Warriors, if you're bringing them, I'm not. I wish warriors were just a little bit better. But warriors, if you're bringing them, they're going to be gaining benefits from that +1 to strength, as well as the imperative to +1 to hit. So that is always good. And then your Hive Tyrants hitting on strength 10. Love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So easy, +1 to strength and synapse. You're going to have stuff in synapse. Neurotyrant leads Zoans. That is incredible. So the fall back, shoot, and charge strat is really good because now the Neurotyrant, which is a unit you would be taking in Synaptic Nexus, you get to put it with the Zoanthropes, and they hit on 2s, which is also really good with Irresistible Will. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So you could essentially have Zoanthropes hitting on 2s, reroll 1s, and then rerolling 1s to wound as well, which is just kind of bonkers if you ask me. Very, very, very good unit. The Exocrin's higher strength, just strength 9. I think this detachment is definitely a shooting platform detachment, which I feel like honestly most Tyranids are, but this detachment does it really well because you can fall back, shoot, and charge, and you can get the reroll 1s to hit and wound strat from Irresistible Will, and it just really helps all of your shooty units just run that much more smoothly, and it's strong, and it helps it. And then last but certainly not least, a unit that is not a Synapse unit, but absolutely has just enjoyed this glow up is the Tyrannifex, changing from 2d6 to d6 +6. You just put Tyrannifexes in this detachment because If you're able to trigger heavy with the Tyrant effects by it staying still, of course, and then you put it within the aura for a irresistible will. So then you have a Tyrant effects that hits on 2s, reroll 1s, and then whatever it's firing into, it's definitely not going to be doing like 4s to wound or anything. At the very least, it's probably hitting on or wounding on 3s rather, and then you reroll those 1s. So just really gives that much more efficiency and that much more punch to the Tyrant effects with its gun, because now it's really strong, and then you can buff it even more within the detachment. I got news for you. If you own a Hive Tyrant of any kind, yes, it has already subscribed to WNW. Yes, your little plastic miniature with a big old space alien has subscribed to our YouTube channel. I didn't even know they had YouTube accounts, but they did. So every single Hive Tyrant existent has subscribed to WNW. And instead of fighting it, I think you should subscribe too. We have really cool and fun competitive live streams every Wednesday night, as our title suggests. We have cool and free giveaways. About every other month, we'll be giving away some kind of cool box, and it's really free to do. All you have to do is join our Discord and check out the announcements link, and you'll be in. So we have a really good time in our Discord as well. We've got a lot of really talented members of our community that post really cool art, and we all talk about the stream, and we talk about just Warhammer in general. It's great. It's a great time. Couldn't recommend it anymore. And then we have weekly tactics videos like the one that you're watching right now. It's almost always Tyranids. Sometimes I do shake it up, like with my buddy Charlie, do some Imperial Agents or other things. Pretty much whatever I'm feeling is relevant in the meta at the time. But if you're enjoying this content right now, this video that I'm talking to you about right now, go ahead and consider giving it a like, comment what you're thinking, comment your favorite flavor ice cream even, and then give us a subscription. We'd love to have you. Why should you play Synaptic Nexus? You know, what's kind of the draw, and why is it something that's interesting in the meta or even powerful in Warhammer 40k right now? Let's get into it. First, it's incredibly adaptive. You know, with your different imperatives, your units are able to do the things that they want to do to further your game plan just a little bit better. Whether it's giving your gargoyles a 5-up invuln, if you haven't done that before, it feels pretty darn good. Or giving your mouse up to +1 to hit in melee. It's very strong as well. Punching something with a mouse scepter on a 2-up is way better than punching something with a mouse scepter on a 3-up. So both of those imperatives jump out at me right away that allow for Tyranids to be even more adaptive, that kind of fits with the flavor of the faction. Fallback, shoot, and charge. A lot of our units really just want to be shooting stuff. And honestly, if you were to ask me the best way to beat Tyranids, it would be to tag them. You know, tag Maleceptors, move block them, tag Zoanthropes, move block them as well. And then Tyranids just kind of can't do the things that they want to do. So avoiding that by falling back, shooting, and then charging something is definitely what Tyranids want to be doing right now in the meta. Because it kind of goes around that little weak point that I feel like Tyranids definitely suffer from. And then the next bullet point is actually something really interesting that I really love about detachments, is the strength of the detachment doesn't rely on having the keyword. Yes, sometimes the reinforced hive node, and you could argue, I guess, irresistible will, but you just need to have a good number of units in the detachment having Synapse, and then the rest of your army can just really benefit from the strength of those units by giving out a 6-inch aura buff of irresistible will. Giving a bunch of things reroll 1s to hit and wound is very strong, or, you know, falling back and charging, etc. You're able to function in the army without completely dumping the other strong units of the faction that aren't Synapse units, which I think is very nice. There's some detachments out there where you really have to go all in on keywords, and I don't think this is necessarily one of those detachments. So you are able to build a well-rounded list without really pigeonholing yourself into a specific keyword. Irresistible will with Zoanthropes and Tyrannifexes is just ridiculous. We've talked about it a little bit, but spreading out your Zoanthropes, basically being able to spread that 6-inch aura of reroll ones to hit and wound basically wherever you want it. It just really gives the Tyranids just the ability to kill whatever they want for a turn. They just look at something and then it's dead. If you haven't rerolled ones to hit and wound with a Tyrannifex that has stood still, oh man, you haven't even played Warhammer yet. It is it is such a powerful feeling. Hitting on twos, wounding on twos with a lot of stuff, and then re-rolling those ones. It is just so good. If you roll, if you're wounding something on a 3 with a Tyrannifex, go ahead, CP that 2 that happens, but you won't need to CP the 1 because the Irresistible Will really, really makes it happen. And then last but not least, I kind of I guess touched on it a little bit when I was talking about the strength of detachment. It's just a detachment that is focused on making good units even better. With this detachment, you're not really forced to play any units that I don't feel like are strong or powerful. You can just play the strong units that Tyranids have access to, and then they get a little bit of a buff. They get a little bit of flexibility within the stratagems and the imperatives of the detachment that just allow your really cool army to do really cool things even better. I really like when Games Workshop is able to create detachments that do that, as opposed to just right out and just telling you what you have to build and what your detachment has to be. So Synaptic Nexus does a phenomenal job at doing that. Here's my favorite part of every single video, where we can just really dive in. Yes, we've learned what the detachment does and some key synergies, some really cool combos you can do, but how do you put this all together? How, if I was playing and if I was approaching the table with this detachment, what is my game plan and what am I trying to do in order to score more points and have a better time at Warhammer 40k? So first up, I want to talk about this is pick your triangle. I did talk about this in an earlier video when I talked about Synaptic Nexus, but I think it is definitely worth the time to talk about again. And Warhammer, oftentimes in most missions and most maps, if you just focus on 2 objectives outside of your deployment zone, you will be able to max primary by the end of the game and really just lock down those areas and do your best to not really push too many of your assets into your opponent's natural expansion, or honestly even into your opponent's deployment zone, unless your game plan specifies that that's what you want to do. So if you're able to really hold that area of the map, it definitely allows for you to score higher primary and for you to just be better at the game. And I think that Synaptic Nexus does a really good job at this because of all of the synergy and the buffs that you're able to pass out. And that's another thing. Stack your buffs appropriately. This is definitely a detachment that is going to want to put kind of a castle of shooting, which that's kind of how I like to play, and maybe that's why I like this detachment. But it's going to want to assemble a castle of shooting, and it's going to want to look at something and then absolutely delete it. So in order, and this goes back to picking your triangle, you're not really going to be able to control the entire board all at once. You're going to want to be able to specify certain areas of the board and say your opponent cannot go there or they're dead, and then maintain the game state from that point. However, it's very important that you need to double check your synapse ranges with this. And, especially if you're going for an irresistible will, make sure when you are moving, you triple check your measurements to make sure that the units that you want to be in are within 6 inches. I've been burnt by this. I actually played a stream with Synaptic Nexus very recently, this Wednesday of the recording of this. And I even messed up with one of these times, and I had one unit that was just out of irresistible will range, but it just goes to show rather that it is so important for you to triple check your ranges and all of your buffs. Definitely a high importance, especially with this detachment. Plan out your imperatives. I think Synaptic Nexus is definitely a detachment where your imperatives are something that you're going to be able to plan out probably a little bit more than Gladius. I think Gladius is a little bit more reactionary, but just for example, for a game flow that I think would be good is advance get +1 to advance and charge. You probably most likely will not benefit from the charge aspect of that, but you can advance control a little bit of the board from where you want to. Stage very well so that the next turn you can jump out and shoot. And then maybe the next turn, maybe your opponent's right up in your face. That's probably a good time to pop your 5-up invuln if you have units that are really going to benefit from that. And then by turn 3 or turn 4, your Maleceptors are going to be in their phase. Your Warriors, if you're taking them, it's definitely a good time to pop +1 to hit so that your melee units hit just a little bit more efficiently. So you don't necessarily have to follow that game plan every single time, but it is definitely good to think about when you were building your list to make sure that you have some kind of idea about each of your units being able to efficiently take advantage of each of those imperatives. And then this bullet point is commit to kill when you can overkill. I think with this detachment and with Tyranids in general, you really don't want to split your forces to too many different areas, or honestly, to too many different enemy units, especially if you're firing into some really durable units. Commit to kill when you can overkill. Overkill is the best kill. So, of course, don't overexpose units that you don't need to, but definitely make sure that you are committing an entire force into a certain area of the table or into a certain enemy unit that is definitely able to take care of that unit, because you definitely don't want to be splitting your shots and then your opponent has a couple of squads that maybe are a little bit weakened and then they can counterattack and tag up Tyranids, which is definitely not what you want. Definitely eliminate 1 to 2 big units instead of trying to spread your forces throughout the map. I can't stress that enough, especially honestly in all Tyranid play. Then last but not least, the stratagem that is basically the reason to play the detachment, and in my opinion, is Irresistible Will. Pretty much giving potentially your entire army reroll 1s to hit and to wound into one specific enemy unit is just very, 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 very strong. So, especially when we have so many units that I feel like can hit on 2s that are so strong. These Zoanthropes with leading the Neurotyrant, and then standing still Tyrannifexes hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s to wound. Whew, it is so good. Hey everybody, try this list. I made it, and I wrote it, and I'm actually pretty happy with where it is. But let's dive into it, and I'll talk about some of the choices that I made and kind of how I think it would run. I've been able to play it once before. I played a similar version of this, except I got rid of the Exocrines for 1 Norn Emissary, which was very fun. But let's hop into the list. First, the characters. I have a Hive Tyrant, which I think pretty much every single Tyranid list should be taking a Hive Tyrant, but it has Synaptic Control with that -1 damage that I talked about earlier on in the video, just really helping the Hive Tyrant stick around for a majority of the battle, which is absolutely what you want. It gives the advance and shoot with assault, and then as well as lethals, which is definitely a huge buff. You're able to castle up a bunch of your guns and then just really take out enemy units by all of those buffs, which is very, very nice. Then after that, we have the Neurotyrant with Power of the Hive Mind. This flamer is disgusting. Strength 6, AP 2, ignore cover, damage 2. Do I need to say more? Oh, it's 2d6 too. Jeez, it is so good. It will also provide Synapse for your Gargoyles for that 5-up invul if they have it, or even your T-Fexes that we'll talk about in a second. Next, with Battle Line, you have double Gargoyles. I know some people are off Gargoyles because they're a little bit expensive, but honestly, being able to move block, being able to shoot and scoot, and just score is such a good boon for these Gargoyles. You're going to need chaff. You're going to need units to deny primary and deny other secondaries from your opponent. I highly recommend Gargoyles to do it. So you have 2 of them. If your points are a little bit iffy, Hormagaunts also do the trick, but I feel like Gargoyles, just with the extra 2 inches of movement, actually extra 8 inches of movement, if you really think about it, with the shoot and scoot, definitely are worth their weight in gold for the points, in my opinion. Then jumping into the rest of the list, We have a Biovore because you're playing Tyranids and you have a Biovore. Excuse me. But yeah, we have a Biovore. Spore Mines do great things. You can control the battlefield with shutting off advances and then also move blocking. So just a great time. 2 Exocrines. There is an argument, and one of the reasons why I brought a Norn Emissary for a game instead of 2 Exocrines is because if you're able to time Irresistible Will, do you really need the reroll ones to hit buff from the Exocrines? And I think honestly the answer is yeah, probably. They are just a really efficient, strong gun that even if they are not triggering and making the most benefit off of the reroll ones to hit because you already have it, just 135 points for what that gun does is hard to come by in Warhammer, in my opinion. So I put 2 of them in this list. Next up, we have 2 Lictors. I really like Lictors right now. I think they're 55 points. Well, I know they're 55 points, but they fight first, they infiltrate, they rapid ingress for free. And with Synaptic Nexus, if you get them in synapse range, which should be pretty easy, they're strength 8. Strength 8 fight first does really, really well into Space Marines because every single wound that goes through is going to be a dead Space Marine, which is beautiful and exactly what we want to hear, right? Normally in my normal list, I run 3 Lictors, but in this list, I only had 2. So you can make the argument and maybe think about forward deploying 1 Lictor and then using another one for a rapid ingress for free. Could be strong, could be a good idea. Just note that understand when you're rapid ingressing the Lictor, you can't rapid ingress another unit. Even if you do that unit first, it has a weird clause where you can only do that Lictor for free, not an additional unit. Interesting. I don't know. Then we have 2 Maliceptors that just do a really good job of being Maliceptors. You know, they pass out that -1 to hit aura within 6 of them. And then if you really get to whittle something down, then it's also -1 to wound. They're really tanky with a 4-up invuln, and they have a great gun. You know, the melee is just kind of the cherry on top, which does come in handy with this detachment. You can get Maliceptors to hit on 2s, you know, and this detachment in Crusher Stampede, I believe, yes, is the only detachments that allow you to have a Maliceptor to punch somebody in the face on 2s. And that is great. In a pinch, Irresistible Will in combat with a Maliceptor, hit on 2s, reroll 1s, then also reroll 1s to wound. Could be a really cool combo. I would love it. Then we have the Pyrovore. If you're taking a Maliceptor, I think you take at least 1 Pyrovore, almost always. So if you're able to position the Pyrovore so that it strips the cover away from them, that it really allows the Maliceptor with the AP2 to kind of feel like that AP2 actually functions. I think AP2 is kind of an area where it, you know, I don't know, if somebody's in cover, which everybody's in cover if they want to be right now. So if you're in cover and a Maliceptor is shooting at you, all of a sudden it's only AP1. And then if you're Space Marine, then you're also popping Armor of Contempt. So then you just get your regular armor save. Having a Pyrovore and being able to position it so that you deny that cover definitely makes your Maliceptors more efficient and more able to Malicept, you know? I don't know if that's a verb. It is now. Congrats. Then next up in this list, we have 3 Raveners because I think the Uppy Downy is really strong. They're just an extra scoring piece. You know, I think this is definitely a flex spot if you think that, you know, a different unit fits better within that slot. Sure, go for it. But I honestly have been having a lot of fun with Raveners being able to score secondaries early on in the game by hopping up and then deep striking somewhere. I throw them away, honestly, sometimes, and they often take more for your opponent to commit into than they originally think. So it is definitely, you know, that's good. You know, 75 points is not a small amount to just simply throw away. But if you're able to score enough points and have your opponent push out in an area where they don't necessarily have to because of Raven or Deep Strike, I definitely think they are worth it. Double T-Fex with Rupture Cannons. We've talked about it a lot with this video. I think if you're running Synaptic Nexus, you are probably also running at least 2 Tyranids with Rupture Cannons, because the possibility of rerolling 1s to hit and wound with these units is just so powerful that I think you absolutely want to have it in your list. Easy. And then last but not least, I just have one unit of 6 zoanthropes. I definitely think you can make the argument with Synaptic Nexus that you lean a little bit heavier with the zoanthropes, and maybe you have 2 neurotyrants, and then you have 12 zoanthropes or something like that. I think that could be something that people would want to look into. I kind of like having a well-rounded list of different profiles, which is why I made this list the way it is. So let me know what you think. If you like the list, try it out. Pop in our Discord, post in the comments here. Let me know how the list served you. Let me know if you would tweak or do anything different with this list. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with me today, thinking about Synaptic Nexus. I really appreciate all the support that's been coming into the channel. It's been honestly mind-boggling. I cannot believe that we've gotten to where we are so far. So I can't thank the support enough of you guys. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I promise you our content is only getting better, and we are really deciding to work hard and really just give back the content that our community deserves. So if you like this video or any other video that we've done, comment, like, tell us what you like, and then subscribe. I'll see you Wednesday.